Hey guys, Josh with ABG Tutorials. This is going to be a pretty quick video on HTML tables. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go through some basic tables, show you the tags that you're going to be using. I'm going to show you a couple of the basic table attributes, the ones you're going to be using more frequently. And then I'm going to show you a couple of advanced table attributes. They aren't really advanced. I just don't think you're going to use them as frequently as the other attributes. So here's the syntax for a basic table. You need to use a table tag, and I didn't put it on here, but obviously the table tag does need to be closed when it's finished. A TR stands for a table row, so a new row. And then the TD means, I think, table data. That's going to control your columns. So you're going to have TRs when you want new rows, and you're going to have a series of TDs if you want that row to hold a bunch of columns. Okay, now instead of the TD, you can use TH, and that kind of stands for a header. So then the font is just going to be a little bit more bold. So here are the basic table attributes. Border. So if you don't actually put a border attribute in there, the data that you type in will be placed in a table, but you won't really know it's in a table without the border. So sometimes you want the border, sometimes you don't want the border, but you can clearly see a table is present when there's a border present, and it isn't always so obvious when there isn't a border present. Okay, so you can add, border equals 5 pixels or 6 pixels or 10 pixels, something like that. Most of the way to style a table is going to need CSS, and I've introduced this style attribute and the syntax for it before. So here I'm showing you that we can change the width of the table to 80%. So that's how far across the page it goes. We can change the background color to anything we want. And we can change the height as well. Something to keep note of, you can control, or you can set your entire table to have specific attributes, or you can set specific cells to have the attribute. So you could have a specific cell with a different color, a different font, a different width, or anything like that. Padding and spacing are going to come in play when you look at your table, and if you don't like how much space is between the border and your content, or between your content, you can play around with padding and spacing. So the padding is going to add space between the edges and the content, and the spacing is going to actually space out between each cell. So often you'll set up a table, you'll look at it, you'll determine if you like the way it looks or not, and then you'll play around with a little bit of padding or spacing before you finish your table off. Okay, so I've got some code here loaded up. Here's this first table. I've got a border of 5 pixels, and so you can see on this first table, it's got a border of 5 pixels. I'm setting the style attribute to change the width to 60%, so that's why it only goes 60% across my page. And I've changed the background color to aqua. All of these tables have that. So obviously you could look up a color code, you could change this color to anything you want. Right here I'm showcasing the TH, just showing that the font is just a little bit thicker, I guess. It's like a bold font. And then the TD, each TD just takes your table and adds a column, and then when you add a TR, it goes ahead and adds a new row. So I just want to show you here though, if you wanted to change the width to something like 90%, what's going on here? You can see my table shot across to 90%. So you can use that style attribute on the table tag to control the entire size of the table. But if you look at my next example, I've got a width of 100%, and then on one of my THs, I've got another width of 70%. And so what's actually happening here is it's setting my entire table to 100%, and then I'm going in and saying, but I want this to take up 70% of that 100%. So you can start to customize your table so that it stretches out certain cells or shrinks certain cells so that it displays the content that you want. So here, if I wanted to change the width here to something smaller, like 40%, and save it, you can see this got shrunk. And so you can kind of always play around with the width of your entire table. You could change this to say 50%. And now my entire table is 50%. And then within there, you can change what percentage each of these would be if you like. Now there are other ways to set this, and often you'll want to do that in CSS. So that's why I didn't want to show you too many things here. Now the other thing that's going on here on this table is I've added a height to this one TD of 40 pixels, and that's why right here you can see it's a little bit taller. And let's say that I wanted to change this to, let's make it a lot bigger, 75. And now notice what happens. This gets much taller, 75 as well. Okay. Often you don't need to change the height too much because you can just play around with spacing and padding. And that's what I'm showing you here on this next little part here. So the last table is, it's got this padding of 20 pixels and a border spacing of 10 pixels. So let's just change that first so that we can see exactly what's going on here. First, let's change the padding to 5. And you can see it brought this little space here much closer. And so you could play around, maybe you only want 1 pixel. And then you can see there's just a little bit of padding there. Now the spacing, let's make it really big here so that you can see 30 pixels. It really spaces out what the content that goes in each of these cells. And if you don't like this border, you can get rid of the border. So you can completely get rid of this border. And you can see it kind of looks like that, which is kind of goofy. Some people will add a border and then they'll make it white so that it looks like, there's white space going through the table. You can really have fun with the border color, the background color, padding, spacing, width. And next thing you know, you've got a pretty customized table that's going to display the content exactly the way that you want. Okay, the advanced table attributes are not so advanced, and that's just if you want a cell to stretch across a couple of columns or to stretch across a couple of rows. And there are obvious examples where you would want to use that. And so I'm going to show you a couple of examples of that. So all you have to do is add this col span equals, and the number here is the number of columns you want it to run, or the number of rows you want it to run. Realistically though, when you're inserting tables into your pages, you're going to customize your tables using CSS. And that means you're going to be able to style them all in one place. And then when you just add a table and use a TH, a TD, or a TR, it's going to automatically style the table the way that you want it to, okay? And I'm going to show you guys that in a couple of videos. Next video is going to be on forms, which is like first name, last name, checkboxes, radio buttons, all sorts of things like that. And then my next video is going to be just introducing CSS and how you can use it on all of your pages. Okay, on the example I've already been using, I do have some of these other tables. I used a lot of line breaks here just to push it to the bottom. And I'm here showcasing this first table. You'll see you've got a col span of 5. And so that means it's going to take up 5 columns. So the way that you design the rest of your table matters. So because there's a col span of 5 here, they're closing off that row. That's enough. Because I want this to take up all 5 columns. But then on your next TR, your next row, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 TDs because they're going to go below that. And so I'm going to load up the live preview. I'm going to scroll. Here's this first one showcasing call span of 5. And so that would be useful when you want to use a title or something like that. And you can obviously see the next example of how you might want to use a table where your cell stretches multiple rows this time. And so right over here, you can see there's a row span of 5. And all of these things, you can add cell padding, cell spacing, you can change the width, you can play around with all of that so that the table looks exactly the way that you want it to. That's it for this video, guys. Just a nice quick one. Look forward to that forms video and the CSS video, and then that's it for the HTML series. As always be grinding.